Alright everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's Rana from Formula UR, and in this video I'm going to bring you an analysis of the Spanish Grand Prix and what we can expect going forwards based on all the learnings from every team and the main contenders throughout the weekend. On the agenda today, we're going to talk about the battle between Verstappen and Leclerc until Leclerc DNF'd, Mercedes' potential resurgence, another strong performance from Valtteri Bottas, as well as McLaren's story of their weekend, how they brought upgrades and had a bit of a tough weekend all round. Before we get cracking, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. It will really mean a lot to us, and without further ado, let's get on with the video. The first topic on the cards for today is the performance between Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc, whom we all think are the title protagonists for 2022. First up, we're going to look at their qualifying performance and how they compared to each other and their teammates. Leclerc put it on pole with a fantastic lap on Saturday, posting a 1:18.750 compared to Verstappen's 19.073, being just over 3/10 down, and that equates to around 0.4% over a 100-second lap. Leclerc also had a bigger gap to his teammate, 4/10 to Carlos Sainz compared to 3.5 to Sergio Perez. Both got the absolute maximum from their cars on Saturdays, and it teed up a fantastic race, so we thought, at least between the pair of them, for Sunday. Before I dive into the details of the race pace analysis, we're going to take a quick look at their telemetry from qualifying, Max in blue, Leclerc in red, to highlight some of the differences we may see from the outside between the two drivers and cars. So looking at the top graph, that shows a speed trace, so the speed on the straights and speed through the corners. We can see that the Red Bull and Max are very strong on the straights, having higher VMAXs at the end of the first straight and the back straight, often gaining a 1/10 to a 1/10.5 in Sector 1 over the Ferrari. However, Leclerc's minimum speeds through practically every single corner are much higher. By much, I'm talking a few kilometers an hour, but that makes all the difference in F1. It's also very strong on the brakes, the Ferrari, so expectedly the Ferrari was very strong in sectors 2 and 3 compared to the Red Bull, gaining time in the slow speed corners and on the brakes. This extra cornering performance from the Ferraris means, or suggests, that it has more downforce, and that means it's able to manage the tyre temperatures better throughout the lap, and this was evident in Sector 3 with Leclerc being purple nearly a 1/10 quicker than Verstappen in Sector 3. Also, something interesting of note is Leclerc's driving style. Something I've noticed in particular since 2018. He's adopted a style where he overlaps both the throttle and the brake through most corners. Why does he do this exactly? Well, the Ferrari this year is said to be quite pointy or on the nose, which means it's prone to oversteering on corner entry and suffers from rear instability. More on that later and how that's affected Carlos Sainz, but in terms of how Leclerc is driving around this problem, he keeps a bit of throttle mid-corner to induce purposefully some understeer. What it does effectively is it transfers the weight from the front of the car more rearwards to ensure there's more grip at the rear and the car is more finely balanced. It's a very difficult technique to master because it needs to be in line with how Leclerc is setting up the car, how he's approaching every different corner, and if he gets it wrong, it could ultimately pay a big price. So that's something we must keep in mind with what Leclerc is doing, and he must be praised to the absolute maximum for it. If you haven't watched the race yet by now, and you're a Charles Leclerc fan, please cover your ears, because, spoiler alert, he didn't finish the race. And ultimately this makes comparisons quite tricky, factoring in Verstappen's own mistake as well, which meant he was stuck behind George Russell for a long period of time. However, we did get a relatively little sample from laps 2 to 8, when Leclerc and Verstappen were one behind the other, and Leclerc had a small pace advantage, around 1.5 tenths, which bodes really well for them compared to what we saw in Miami, where Verstappen seemed to have a much bigger edge in tyre wear, tyre degradation, and overall race pace, and how he was able to manage the race over a long stint. Whilst we didn't see Leclerc versus Verstappen over a long stint, due to obviously the mistakes, what we did see was a really composed Leclerc out front, managing the race, not yielding to any pressure, as well, I wouldn't say he has done in the past, but he looked very comfortable out there and looked set for a very easy win, encouraging for Ferrari going forwards. I can't not talk about Sunday without going over briefly the team orders saga at Red Bull. Red Bull got a lot of backlash for it, which is fair enough, I guess. It robbed us viewers off a potential show or a fight for the victory between Max Verstappen and Perez. But ultimately, from Red Bull's position, it made total sense looking back. Max, whether we like it or not, if you're a Sergio Perez fan, Max seems to be the guy who Red Bull are leaning on to challenge for the driver's title. And obviously they want to maximise every single point that Max Verstappen has had, or he can have, because he's had so much bad luck, as it's Perez. But Max really could be even further ahead if it wasn't for factors outside his control. So wanting to win those points back is very understandable. At that stage in the race as well, Max was lapping well over a second per lap quicker than Perez, and it would have gotten by with relative ease. So why risk any chance of contact or DNFing, especially when Charles Leclerc had already retired the race? And many people think that final team order that was given to Perez to let Max through lost him the race. But in my opinion, after looking over it in depth, it was the strategy and the fact that he let Max through after his mistake initially in the first place that lost Checo the race. Checo was on a 2-stop strategy compared to Max's 3-stop, and in his middle stint on the medium tyre, he was actually told to drive to a delta, a high 26.8, when he was capable of doing low 25s, and ultimately he wasn't allowed to close that gap to Max when he had fresh tyres compared to Max's 15-16 lap old softs, and that's what undid Checo's race, as well as letting Max through and losing his momentum and trying to pass Russell in the first stint. And ultimately, Max is a little bit fortunate not to pay for his big mistake at the beginning of the race, but hey, what goes around comes around. Max has been flawless for all season, hasn't made any mistakes, and has been so unlucky that he's due a bit of luck, isn't he? So to briefly summarise, Ferrari looked very strong. Despite the DNF, Leclerc showed he means business and is right in the mix for the title, despite slipping back behind Verstappen in the title lead. And Leclerc's qualifying form this year, he hasn't been out-qualified by Max in the dry or by his teammate. So if it's a dry qualifying in Monaco, Leclerc's form over one lap could pay off significantly if he doesn't stuff it in the wall again like he did last year. So yeah, very, very good momentum still for Ferrari, and they'll be looking forward to Monaco for sure. And on to the next topic is Mercedes. So the big question is, did Mercedes fix their issues? Are they back in the title fight or the fight for wins? Well, let's go over it. George Russell, the lead Mercedes driver in qualifying on Saturday, was 0.817% off pole position, an improvement compared to Miami, to Saudi Arabia, to Imola, but ultimately it's still short of what they managed in Bahrain, so that's something to consider. although they did claim that they were struggling with tyre temps, especially in Sector 3, and they haven't had much time to really set their car up and optimise it for their new not bouncing package, to say the least. But there's still work to do over one lap for sure. However, the big talking point was on Sunday, with Hamilton's incredible race pace, to say the least. Many sources out there say it was close to the Red Bull or even faster. And his medium stint, well, I should clarify, his second stint on the mediums, where his first stint was lap 1. So his second stint after his puncture pit stop, if you like, on the mediums was incredible. Had amazing tyre management and was matching the lead runners on much older tyres. And that is how he managed to go from last back to top 5. As I did with the title contenders, I'm going to go through the weekend step by step, starting with the qualifying head-to-head at Mercedes. Russell managed to edge out Hamilton, which is key for his confidence. Must do wonders managing to out-qualify 7-time world champion and be very close to his one-lap pace straight away. And essentially what I've done here is extracted the telemetry, the delta, brake and throttle traces of their Q3 laps. Credit to F1 Tempo, who've managed to put all the data together. Please check the link in the description to access some of this data yourself. It's great, it's really great. So the top graph shows the speed traces, the middle graph shows the delta between Russell and Hamilton, and the bottom two show the brake and throttle traces. I've annotated on the graph how much lap time each driver gained in every single corner, and it's very, very close. Russell edging out in Sector 1, and at the end of Sector 3 was Hamilton very strong in the middle. So nip and tuck between the two as expected. But one interesting thing I noticed is that Russell was very good in the high speed corners, and Hamilton is very good on the brakes and in the slow speed corners. And this is not exclusive to Spain, this has been a trend all season and throughout both of their respective careers. Another interesting thing of note is driving style. Again, Hamilton and Russell drive very differently. Hamilton is a late hard braker, whereas Russell is earlier on the brakes, rolls speed into the corner and likes to balance out the weight shift mid-corner to ensure the car is not over-rotating, something Lewis is struggling with a little bit this year with some rear instability. Hamilton brakes later, harder, and likes to over-rotate the car, and he's been struggling to keep the rear tyres under control this year, and as I said, get on top of that rear instability. Yet has been managed to be lightning fast in the slow speed corners, which bodes well for Monaco. So seeing these differences in driving style, it's going to be very interesting to follow how this pairing goes over the rest of the season, and I'm very much looking forward to it, as are you. Now the race pace. So Hamilton was on an effective 2-stop after his puncture. He pitted for the softs after the puncture, did a 20 odd lap stint on that, and then went on the mediums, did a similar stint on that, and then went back to the soft. Whereas Russell did a soft, medium, medium, soft, and well, to say the least, Hamilton made the absolute most of the situation he was in. His gap to George at the end of lap 2 was 51.6 seconds. At the end of lap 62 before their water leak, it was 11.5 seconds. That's what, 40 seconds over 60 laps. That's crazy, crazy pace. But we must bear in mind Russell does lose a lot of time making the extra stop. So it's a net 20 odd second gap still between them, which is very hefty. On average, when I exclude statistical outliers and dirty air laps, using some A-level maths, we get Lewis around 3/10 quicker than George, which is mighty, mighty pace, right up there with Max, Charles and Sergio Perez. Could he have fought for the win? We'll never know, but if this pace continues for the rest of the season, Be sure Hamilton will be hunting and hungry as ever for that, to return to the top step, maybe challenge for the title. Early days, but you never know in the sport. So just to sum up, Mercedes argue Lewis was in contention for victory, accounting for the Max error and Leclerc DNF. He pulled out a roughly 13 seconds net on Max before the water leak, of course including Max's brief off at turn 5. And, well, it's all if, buts and maybes, isn't it? But, you know, encouraging signs for Mercedes. Much better than anything we've seen all season. And they should definitely build on this. Have some momentum now going into a leg of known tracks. Some tracks they've been very successful in the past, bar Monaco. And then we'll see where it goes. A victory, a title challenge, let's wait and see. Valtteri Bottas, another fantastic performance from VB. Best of the rest in quali, within a tenth of Hamilton. 4th fastest sector 3, something that went unnoticed. 27.4 compared to Leclerc's 27.3. It's around 0.4% if we extrapolate to 100 seconds. Something that no one really talked about though was Alfa Romeo's strategy. A poor strategy cost him P5, I reckon, with Lewis's water leak. And, well, let's hope it doesn't have a big price come the end of the season, because that car is very fast in VB's hands, and at the moment has to be favourite for best of the rest in the championship, doesn't he? So momentum builds, looks fantastic for Monaco. Let's see how it goes. And last but not least, something I said I'll come back to at this stage of the video is Sainz and Danny Ric. They had very poor weekends for their standards, to say the least. Starting with Carlos spinning miles off his teammate's pace in qualifying. He had damage, to be fair, still salvaged P4, but was very lucky to salvage that good a result for his weekend. Danny Ric was decent in qualifying, still 0.3 off Norris when you consider Lando's actual lap time. Q3, that will do him some goods for confidence, but in the race he had no pace at all. He said he had no grip anywhere, suffering from a bit of understeer. Binotto and Brown claim their drivers aren't comfortable in their cars yet. Sainz from rear instability, Ricciardo with some turn-in understeer, similar to 2021. I do wonder if the pull rod front suspension has something to do with it. Kimi Raikkonen had the same problem with the pull rod front suspension, which induces understeer naturally. Something I can touch upon in a later video if need be. Danny Ric and Kimi like a very pointy car, very oversteery on entry, and they're masters of rear instability. Sainz is a master of rotating a car on the brakes, which means he's very good at driving with understeer. So Danny Ric and Carlos, they'd love each other's cars at the moment, but ultimately they have to put up with what they've been given and get on top of it, because pressure is mounting for both of them. Zach Brown coming out this week saying Daniel's not met their expectations, also talking about Pato O'Ward and Colton Herta having tests. Is the end near for Daniel Ricciardo? Who knows? Shout out as well to Lando Norris, who got P8 with tonsillitis. Wish him well for Monaco. Let's hope he can be back to his best, because he's having a great season in my opinion, getting the most from his machinery and, well, fighting with Bottas indirectly for that best of the rest at the moment. So if he's ruled out with tonsillitis, that might cost him come the end of the year. So let's hope he's fully fit for Monaco, because he got a podium there last year, put in a banging performance. Let's hope for more of the same from Lando Norris in Monaco. So that concludes it for the Spanish Grand Prix roundup. This is relatively new series, style of content I want to bring to you, going a bit more into depth than what you may see around on socials. Monaco Grand Prix coming up next. A similar video will be out sometime next week. Tune in for that, and until next time, I'll see you around.